All set up.
So of course you're gonna send your seat.
Ooh, center seat.
There's a couple over in case you're gonna need it.
Oh, thank you. Hi, guys.
All right.
It is all guys.
Yes, so far. All right, hang on just a moment, wait for
Do you mind if I take a picture of you all?
Go right ahead.
Sure. Take a picture of you.
Well, see? Well, first of all, I gotta hit the right button, don't I? Okay. Thank you.
Oh, here we go. All right.
Girl,
Yes.
one of my kind.
Since you're the main attraction here today, we're getting the prize away at the end of the show. And we're going with the very special prize.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry. You are a very special guest, so we're giving away a very special prize at the end of your presentation.
So definitely we want to hang around to the end of the show for this particular thing. I'm going to do that. Yeah.
No, it's they do.
Yeah, sure beats rock, paper, scissors.
This is a pretty big prize, so we want to make sure we do something right.
Well, it's just,
All right.
I'm going, oh, no, I didn't take it that way. I thought they were saying goodbye, and they were saying, no, come here. Yeah.
This row, two for you guys back here.
Into the 20s.
All right.
So I didn't get offended because that was the system. You just have to remember what's the system.
That always goes good. Okay, well, Sean, why don't you take it away and introduce us?
Introduce people that need no introduction. We are very honored and pleased to have Ms. Miller here with us this afternoon. A legend in the kaiju genre. As you know, she's the star, one of the co-stars of King Kong Escapes. I want to say the star. We'll let the other two
Kong
guys
was the
address it.
star.
Kong was the star.
Well said.
She's the one of the human stars.
Yeah.
And also a small role in Green Slime. Again, it's really cool to have you here. We're so glad you can make the trek down to Atlanta, and it's been hospitable for you so
Oh, yeah,
far.
oh, yeah. All of the conventions I've ever gone to have been, everybody's been so nice and so welcoming, so this has been awesome.
And of course, if you've been in the conference already, you know the guy down there at the end. That's Ed Gazucheski,
Yes.
noted author and interviewer extraordinaire. And he has been kind enough to prepare a little slideshow and presentation for us to help us out. And then we'll ask Ms. Miller some questions about her experiences. And let's get started.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. And let's just start out with, one of the most basic questions. Linda, you obviously got this job in Japan. How did you ever wind up in Japan in the first place?
My dad was in the Air Force, and we were living in Oklahoma, and he got orders to come to Japan. And in the military, every so often, you cycled to overseas. It was his time to go overseas, so I asked Dad, he said, Daddy, let's go to Spain, because I wanted to be an interpreter. That was like my goal when I graduated from high school, to go to college in Madrid. It sounded so exotic, And so, of course, they sent him to Japan instead, and that's how we wound up in Japan.
Even more exotic.
Even more, in a totally different way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at what age were you at that
I was 17.
time?
I was really young.
So once you got to Japan, what was it that you were doing there?
Well, the thing is, before going to Japan, I was upset because it wasn't Spain. But I remember landing and looking out the window. We landed at Tachikawa Air Force Base, and I just fell in love with it. Like, all of a sudden, it was like one of those supernatural feelings where I felt at home. And from that moment, I just totally embraced everything, every experience I had, every Japanese person I met, the food, the culture, the people, everything. And I just fell in love with Japan. I still think it's one of the most awesome places on earth.
I agree with that. So when you arrived in Japan, did you have any knowledge of Japanese? Or?
No, I thought everybody was going to be in kimonos and that there would be pagodas everywhere. And when I saw the Western clothes, I went, oh. No, the preconception that you had at that time about the Asian culture was just totally wrong. Yeah, so.
But you didn't know the language, so how did you get to learn Japanese?
Well, an interesting thing happened. When I was a little girl, we lived in France, and there was a girl next door that was a friend of mine in France. And Dad got orders. Daddy left early. He left in February, and Mom waited till I graduated. But I didn't get to go to my graduation because we had to be on a plane to Japan. So my dad said, I can't remember her name now, but do you remember the girl you lived next door to in France? I said, yes. He said, she's here, and she's having a graduation party tonight. So I went to the graduation party, and there was a girl there that's shorter than I am, and she was bragging about how she made all this extra money modeling. And I looked and I thought, damn, she's shorter than I am. And if she can do it, I can do it. So I got all the information from her, and I went to Patricia's Charm School in Harajuku. And I, you took the courses, how to put makeup on, how to walk, I was never good at walking, but putting makeup on and all that kind of stuff. And I started working almost within a couple weeks, and then that's how I learned Japanese.
So
Just from being, immersion, they call that. So I was.
And here's some of the types of jobs that you were doing.
I was the Noritake girl for the Far East. Far East. And I did a lot of magazines and newspaper ads for them.
Were you still in school at this time?
I graduated a year early because I knew that we were going to go overseas. So I went to summer school and graduated. Instead of my going 12 years, I went 11 years. So when I got to Japan, I was out of high school. Yeah.
So you're doing these modeling jobs, and then somehow you got asked to be in a movie. Tell us a story about how that happened.
I had been there about 2 years, and I was contracted for the cover of a young girls magazine. It was a weekly magazine, and there were two of us, gaijins, two of us foreigners, and we would switch off every week, and then sometimes we would do a shoot together. And so one of the magazine covers came to the attention of Arthur Rankin, and out of the blue, I don't know how he found my number, but out of the blue, I got a call from him, and he introduced himself, and I was immediately suspicious. And I went, yeah, you're from Hollywood, yeah. So he introduced himself and said, I'd like to meet with you and talk to you about doing my film. And I said, well, I can't do that because I've never acted before, so, He said, no. He said, just meet with me. So he took me to this room, Maxine's. It was like the French version. It was like really ritzy. And I'd never been to a ritzy restaurant before. So I met him there, and he told me all about the movie and what my part he wanted me to play. And I just said, this is an incredible opportunity, but I am going to spoil your movie. I don't think you should hire me because I don't know what I'm doing. And he just persisted, you know. So we parted and then we met again. And he said, look, he said, it's not a challenging part, you know. You're going to be with a big 8. And he says, I think you can do it. And he says, because you look like Susan Watson. In my mind, you look like Susan Watson. So I said, are you sure you're not going to regret this, that I ruined your movie? He said, no, you'll be fine. So I said, okay. And that's how I got the part. And it's kind of like, you know, those times in your life when you don't get what you deserve, thank God. You know, you know, it's like God's smiling on you and just puts his hand here and says, okay, I'm going to move you over here. It was like that. It was like, no, I didn't audition, nothing. And it was like I was in the right place at the right time with the right look.
Well, Arthur must have been really sold on you because
Yeah.
I got a copy of the movie pitch that Tanaka made to the Toho people, and your name is in there. You know,
Really?
like, you know, they have the story summary, and then it's like, okay, here's the cast, and it was like, you know, we need a leading man from America, blah blah blah. Linda Miller will play Susan Watson.
Really?
And we want a leading man from Japan. They didn't have anybody else's
They didn't
name
have
in there.
Takarada yet?
Not at that time. Not in the pitch.
You were the anchor.
Specifically named.
It was all about you.
pitch.
Was there drinking in the pitch?
No, it's just like a written document.
Oh.
Yeah, so like your name was specifically mentioned and they're like, wow, they were really sure that you were the one for this job.
But let me, before we got, so when you said you moved this from Rankin, were you familiar with the work that he had already done at all?
I had
I say you said you were suspicious. You had never heard his name before? Or?
Never heard his name, never knew anything that, see, I'm living in Japan when all this is going on in the States. So I had no idea about Rudolph and Santa Claus and all the things that he was doing. I didn't know who he was at all.
Wow.
I didn't know anybody. I didn't know who Honda-san was. I didn't know who Takarada-san was. I didn't know who Rhodes Reason was. I knew Hamamiya from the James Bond movie. But I didn't have any idea who anybody was. They could have been somebody walking in off the street, you know. Thank God I
was
didn't.
suspicious too.
Well, thank God I didn't know because I wasn't intimidated or, you know, they were just another person in the cast. So what did they say? I can't think what. Anyway, never mind.
She wants to know more about the pitch now. So now that she
Yeah,
knows that she was the reason.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't know
from
that.
the first moment I was looking at this, like, wow, they really, like, they were somehow sold on you, and I always wondered, like, how did you get the job? Because, I mean, you know, there's no offense or anything, just,
But there were others.
it's kind of amazing that just, especially if you've never had any experience, and somehow, I guess that those magazine covers must have really just
Awesome.
Yeah, like you said, he must have had the mental image,
Yeah.
and then this is it.
Yeah.
But you were not a blonde.
No, that was a conversation. I did not want to go blonde. I did not, at that time, I did not want to go blonde. And so Arthur was an interesting character because when this was all going on, we would buy movie magazines to find out what was going on in the States. And at the PX, we'd get the magazines, and there was a story in there about Arthur and his divorce. So that was all very interesting. So Arthur introduced me to his Japanese girlfriend, and I go, oh, that's why he's getting a divorce, you know. And the Japanese girlfriend she had been a previous model, and she just said, no, you're going blonde. And she took me to the salon, and they dyed my hair, and I just had a really hard time getting used to it, you know. But that was what it called for, so that's what I had to do.
Well, what we have up on the screen here is some, I guess these are your camera tests.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I was so thin back then.
We all were.
Yeah, you know how that works.
Yeah, I know how it works.
Another camera shot. I assume that this is for like, you're trying to pose as if you're in Kong's hand.
I don't remember what it was.
Because it
but
looks
it's-
like you're on like a platform.
I was like on a stool or
yeah,
something,
on
and
top of the chair.
yeah, there were several weird pictures I've seen. That's one of them. And
Yeah, we've got another one.
you don't. Yeah. And you know, sometimes they just ask you to do something, you just do it. You don't think about it. And you know, I mean, if that doesn't look like I thought about what I was doing.
So even now, are you seeing pictures that you haven't seen
Yes.
before, and you go, I
Yes.
don't really remember doing that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Sometimes, yeah, I have seen something. It is amazing, the fans will have pictures I've never seen before, you know, which is exciting.
Yes, we have a few in here. So anyway, so you acted with, you were called to act upon with this giant Eggman. You knew, must have known King Kong at least
Yes.
before this.
Yeah, because I'd come home from school, you know, like 4th, 5th grade, and, you know, at 4 o'clock movie, matinee, or whatever they called it, there'd be King Kong, not Godzilla yet, King Kong and Dracula and the Wolfman. All of those scared me to death. You know, I love Dracula though. So I, you know, saw all this. So I knew who King Kong was. I knew who Fay Ray was. So
You didn't- No familiarity with Godzilla?
no, I didn't even know about Godzilla when I was in Japan.
Really?
Yes.
Even?
I worked all the time. You know, I started modeling and I used to keep this big diary, and I worked almost every day, so I didn't have time for entertainment.
Oh, that's interesting. I would have thought, especially during this time period, which is, as we mentioned yesterday when we were talking about these films, this was like the monster boom time. 66, 67, like all the studios started making films. So this one was actually kind of like a big deal to come out at that time. And you know, you're lucky actually. The first King Kong movie they wanted to make was the year before, and they substituted Godzilla for Kong. So you, timing-wise, perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
perfect.
Because King Kong wasn't done until this year. So anyway, all right. So here you are now. You showed up. Tell me about your first day at the studio. What was that like?
I was so nervous. The very first scene in the movie where I come out and I salute and I say something about castor oil, that was the first scene we ever shot. And I was so nervous. It really hit me at that moment. I don't know what the hell I'm doing here, you know? And, excuse me. And so I come out and I do the scene. We did it about 4 or 5 times, and I'm sure it was exactly the same every single time. And I came back and I said to my mom, because my mom was with me every day, I said, they're gonna fire me. They're gonna fire me. I was so awful. And for about 2 weeks, I just really stressed out about how they were gonna fire me. Because when you're a model, everything is stationary. You know, move your head, smile, tilt, do all this. When you're acting, it's fluid, and I wasn't used to being fluid, and it just was very awkward, very, very awkward.
So you mentioned that you had gone to the modeling school and stuff like that. Did you decide to do any coaching for the acting?
No,
while you were on the
no,
set?
it was so dumb, no.
A year ago.
No.
This is it.
I talked to Arthur maybe 2 months before we started shooting, and it never occurred to me to get any training. I don't know why, but it didn't occur to me. So no, I was just thrown in baptism by fire, you know.
But you had something like Rhodes on set to help you through things, right?
It took, yeah, Rhodes kind of took me under his wing, and anyway, he took me under his wing, and he was helpful at times. And he knew I stayed to myself because I was insecure. And so he would, he said this funny, when we did the blue screen and I was just me in Kong's hand, and he said, you know, you have to visualize what's actually going on, da 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 da. And he said this one time he had to kiss an actress with really bad breath. And he said, and he was very dramatic when he talked. And he said, you know, and I imagined her mouth was a rose and I was going in to kiss her mouth. He said, so you have to use your imagination. So he was quite a character. But he helped me a lot. And he, like, when I would do a scene and it was okay, he did a really good job. He did a really good. So he helped with my confidence.
Tell us about Mr. Tucker.
He was so big and so handsome and so nice. You know, I don't know, have you all met him? Any of you met? Oh.
He did a lot of conventions.
He did a lot of conventions.
He's really, he was like an old school movie actor. I mean, really.
Movie star.
Yeah. I mean, he carried himself like that.
Yeah.
In person. You always knew when he was in the room,
Yep.
he was the focus of
Yep.
attention.
Always dressed to the nines.
Oh,
Always took his time with all the fans. We did a couple conventions together, and he just was really a nice man. He was married to Miss Universe, and one of the things, because I spoke Japanese at the time, so one of the things he made known to all of us is that his wife was Miss Universe. You know? He was very, very proud of that. Should give you warning, huh? And but, so we could talk. I mean, I couldn't talk politics or anything, but we could have conversations like we're having now in Japanese. And he spoke almost no English. Yeah, at that time at least. And so in between takes, when we were going to be together, we just talked about nothingness, you know, just like people do. Very nice man, very nice man.
How about
Honda-san.
Mr. Honda, the director.
Yeah. He was like Big Daddy. He was gentle. He had a combination of, he was definitely in charge. There's no doubt that he was running the show. But he was very gentle with me because he knew how fragile I was. And as time wore on and I got a little bit, my sea legs, he was a little different. But at the beginning, he was very gentle with me, and he would explain things, and sometimes he would demonstrate them. He says, Linda-san, I want you to do like that.
Like
and
this?
so, yeah, there you go. This is how you hug Takarada-san. Yeah, he didn't do a lot of takes. He wasn't like, I've heard stories of 30 or 40 takes, which I would die if that ever happened. But he didn't do a lot of takes, but he just always got what he wanted. But you knew if you did something he didn't like. He just had a certain look on his face. And you knew when he did something he approved of, he would, you know, make it known to you that he was pleased. Nice man, very nice man.
I'm always interested to hear about Henry O'Connell.
Henry O'Connell.
Because almost no one has ever talked about him, but he was always so instrumental for all these American actors who came over. So, I mean, what was your experience? Because Henry was an experienced Hollywood actor.
Yes, yeah. And Henry was quite a character. He spoke perfect English and, of course, perfect Japanese. And Rhodes, speaking no English at all, no Japanese at all, he would translate for both of us. Because even though I spoke Japanese, the nuances or you know, the subtleties, it would, you know, go right over my head. And so Henry was there to interpret. Henry was very smiley, and he was describing how this one Japanese actress had a facelift, and he scared the heck out of me. He said they took her face and they pulled it back. and he said, that's how you get a face. And I thought it was accurate. Scared me. I said, I'll never have one of those. And he was jolly, he was fun, he got along with everybody, and he was a dear, dear man.
I always heard that he was like the keeper of secrets between the American staff and the Japanese.
Well, see, Rhodes and Takarada-san, even though they didn't speak, the same language, they got along fabulously. You know, you would think two macho males would probably go now. Well, they did, but in a loving and comical way, you know. They would one-up each other. They would tell dirty jokes and they would understand them, you know. And, but they got along really well. And the whole atmosphere on the set was just wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. Now that I look back on it, I'm not scared anymore. It was a wonderful experience.
How about Mia?
I was in awe of her because she had just come off doing a Bond film. She was a big star. And she was the only one I knew that was a big star. And she didn't talk to me. She didn't say hello or anything. I mean, we didn't have any, I think we had one scene. I was in the same scene, but she and I never had interaction. And I never got really to talk to her. And I was too shy to go up and, well, you didn't do that in Japan anyway, but I was too shy to introduce myself and let her know that I knew she was a star. And I was so happy to meet her. Oh, Rhodes did something. There's a scene where Rose and her are together, and he said, "I want you to watch me." I said, "Okay." So the scene did not call for this, but he took her and did her face like that. If you guys, when you're watching it, watch for that scene. And she wasn't prepared for it. Her eyes got really big. And he said, "Watch this, watch this." Because it wasn't like in the script, and he just ad-libbed it. Did his American actor thing. And it was pretty cool. Caught her off guard.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know if you ever noticed this. You're in that picture.
I am?
Yeah.
Can you see me?
Yeah, you're one of the scuba divers that are escaping from, supposedly escaping from
I didn't
the ship.
know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, yeah. I didn't know that.
See what they do for
Yes, but
you.
it's amazing what they can do.
Okay, so did you ever get a chance to watch any of the filming of the special effects?
I was so fortunate because one day I had some time and, you know, on a movie set you shoot for a couple of minutes and then you got hours of nothing to do. And so I was just kind of roaming around the lot and I wound up this one sound stage. I didn't know that that's where they had all the models. And it was like on a raised platform, these little trees, these little people, helicopters and everything. And I watched them film, and if you like scooted down and looked at it, you could see how real it looked, you know? It was amazing. And I saw that scene there with the helicopters lifting Kong. I watched them film that scene. It was fascinating what they did.
Very good. And so Agent Tsuburaya, he was in charge of the effects. Did you ever have a chance to
I don't
meet
know.
him?
I don't know if I did or not.
That's too bad. But you do remember this day.
I remember that day. We, Rose and I don't know if we were in the makeup room. That building there was where you would go for makeup and hair and all that jazz. And for some reason, we were all in there, and we came out, and there was Nakajima-san in Kong outfit. And coincidentally, there was a photographer. You know.
Maybe not so coincident.
Yeah, well, we didn't know it was planned, but that was the first and only time I came face to face with Nakajima-san.
And Arthur was there.
Arthur was there, Rose was there, I was there. The chances of that happening are phenomenal.
I would say that probably Arthur.
Probably knowing him.
But yeah, so that you got a chance to meet him. Did you ever see him outside of the suit at that time?
No.
So you just knew that there's somebody in there, but you never actually
I never met him.
Was he able to talk to you through the suit?
Oh, remember that he said a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe he roared, I don't know. I don't recall that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about this.
I do not like heights.
Yes.
Do not like heights at all. And so when I walked into the soundstage and I saw this scaffolding and I looked up, I went, oh God. Honda-san showed me how to walk up and down Tokyo Tower. That's Tokyo Tower there. And I actually physically, if you saw any of those scenes where I look afraid, it's not acting. I was not happy to be up there. And then one scene I had to like roll down And I said, well, what if I roll down and roll off? He said, no, you won't. You know? It's like, I said, okay, then I won't.
Well, it's following directions.
Following
Good. How about this? Tell us about this. This is,
Oh. The Japanese lady there's my hairdresser, I can't remember her name. I remember my makeup guy, Suzuki, but I can't remember her name. And I'm in Kong's hand, obviously, I'm in Kong's hand, and there's a big blue screen behind us. And I guess she's fixing my hair or something, trying to make me look good.
was the hand really operable at all?
Yes.
So-
It would do this. There was a hand that was like this, and there was a hand like that.
Two different ones.
Yeah. I don't know if they were different or they just didn't have different functions. But yeah,
But did it ever actually grab you, or was it just, it always, would it close before, stop before it actually touched you? I mean, were you the one who was acting with it, or was that hand
gee, that's a
actually?
good question. I remember holding on so I wouldn't fall off,
Okay.
you know. It was around me enough where I didn't freak out when I lifted it up, but I remember having to hold on
So it would actually go up in the air off of the platform?
off of the platform, yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you were in the hand, did it strike you, did the thought strike you of, I'm Fay Ray now?
No, because I was just holding on so tight. The whole thing did, I mean, up here I understood that that was the role, but it didn't really hit me until after I saw the film. You know, so much of the film, I don't know how to describe it. It's so much of the film, I just did what I was told without realizing what I was doing, without realizing who I was doing it with, and you know, the awesomeness. I had no idea how awesome that period in time was. And so I just did what I was told, you know, and it wasn't until after I saw the whole thing, I went, oh my God, you know, I'm in King Kong's hand. You know, I mean, I knew I was in King Kong's hand, but it just didn't really impact me emotionally until then. In fact, one of the things that Rhodes taught me right off, he said, don't go to dailies. He said, don't go to dailies. And I said, but I want to see. And he said, okay, go. So I went, and I was like, there's no music, there's no editing, it's just raw. And I looked, and I got like sick to my stomach, and I said, oh, I'm never going to, because it looks awful, you know, until they do all their magic to it. And I went back and said, okay, I understand now, because it makes you very self-conscious, because, oh, why do you look like that, or why didn't you do that? I mean, you just get so critical of yourself. You know?
Especially if you have feelings already.
Already.
My job security is in line.
Yeah. And that reinforced, going back for 2 weeks, saying, they're going to fire me, and then they're going to fire me. You know?
So was the 2 weeks the point where you felt like, all right, I'm in for good, they can't do anything, or I've got to handle on it well enough?
After that, I figured they had too much money and time invested, so I might be safe. You know? But prior to that, you know, we're all replaceable whenever. And I felt very replaceable.
Did they have a stand-in or anything for you, or?
They did, you know, the scene where she jumps into the water, I jump into the water. The pool, the body of water they had at Toho, this big tank, was dirty looking.
Yes, it was.
It's like you wouldn't want to ever swim in it. And I was sweating the day that I was going to have to dive into that pool. And I remember them saying, no, we have a stand-in, we have a double. I went, oh, thank God, you know. But when we did the submarine thing, we, you know, you know, the scuba thing,
Yeah.
we had to be in that tank. And it was, and we all, when we got out of there, we all went and took showers and changed clothes. Because it was dirty and it was, you know.
Yes, I can attest to the fact that I've seen the pool several times before they tore it out, and it was pretty nasty.
It was, yeah. It was nasty.
That's one of those strange pictures that,
I've never seen that picture. But okay, never see it again.
yeah.
I don't know that that's me. It doesn't look like my legs. They look longer and thinner.
it's such a, you know, it's such a strange thing that the way they got you suspended there, I would think that they wouldn't do that for one of the stars. So I would agree it's probably like a stand-in for it.
Yeah.
But anyway, here you are.
Yeah, there I am, in his hand.
From the ending scenes, in his hand.
So I only had 3 outfits. Madame Piranha had a fashion show. I had 3 outfits. I had 2 uniforms and a dress.
Okay, where did you shoot these jungle scenes?
Some of them were shot on, oh shoot, what's the name of it?
Is that what she did?
No, oh yeah, and some of them were shot in the studio, and I don't know exactly where those were shot.
Well, that looks like real plants, so.
Yeah,
guess
I
it's
can't remember.
on the island. So what was it like on location?
It was great, it was great. We took a boat from there to Oshima Island, and at that time, it was the 7-day war that Israel had, and we had a lot of Israeli extras on the set, and they were, of course, all celebrating, and we had Arabs on the set, we had English on the set, because, Tokyo is Japanese, obviously, but they have a huge foreign communities there. And so, if you're a foreigner in Japan, chances are you're gonna wind up in a movie, And so we had a lot of different extras, but I specifically remember being on the boat and them talking about the war, and them being so happy that the war was over and it was done. But then when we get to Oshima Island, it was a typical Japanese hotel, tatami mats, so you slept on a futon and tatami mats, and it is so incredibly comfortable, isn't it?
Yes.
And we all had dinner together in a big room, and they cooked right at our table, and we had tempura like you've never tasted in your life. Everything was fresh caught, everything, fresh vegetables. That's one thing I'll say for Japan is, I don't like vegetables, but when I go to Japan, somehow the way they cook them is so good, So that's why I had no trouble with my weight in Japan, because I ate good food. And I was 19.
Yeah. That helps too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh,
That's Tokyo Tower.
Yes,
See?
yeah, we got out there by Tokyo Tower. Did you actually go up there, or was it just all for the set?
We just went to the base of it, yeah. That was like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning we shot that, because we couldn't go to Tokyo Tower during the day because there'd be all kinds of people. So we went like in the middle of the night, middle of the morning, and shot those scenes. And interesting story, which nobody sees in the movie, but I know, is that one scene where I run into Rose's arms, and I'm actually physically crying, and he just was so proud of me that I could actually cry on camera. Nobody sees it, but it was like a big milestone for me, in acting. So, and he was so proud of me.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so, anyway, so once the film was finished, what next? Did you go to the premiere?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was amazing, I was so excited, like a big premiere, they had the lights out, in the sky. And so we went into the theater, and that's when I saw it dubbed in Japanese. And I saw the Japanese version. And I asked them, please, let me do my own speaking in Japanese. And I don't think I have an accent, but they probably think I do, And they said, no, we want a real Japanese. So they dubbed it in Japanese, and I thought it was fabulous. The voice they used in Japan is nothing like the voice they use in America. And it was really, really good. And I walked out of the theater and I thought, well, for someone who doesn't know what they're doing, I did okay, And I was happy with it, very, very happy with it.
They do the usual, well, at least these days, usually when they have a premiere, they'll get the main cast and staff to come up on the stage before the film, so you got a chance to go out there, did they let you speak?
I don't recall if I spoke or not. Knowing me, I probably did, you know, yeah. But, yeah, they had us up on the stage and then they showed the film and everybody clapped and it was very affirming.
And then you wound up seeing in America. Your reaction to that?
It was just what I just gave you. I was so disappointed. I was so embarrassed that they used that voice, that cartoonish voice. And I thought, what's the matter with Arthur, you know? Why would he do that? But see, when I was in Japan, I didn't have a union contract. I didn't have a SAG contract. I had a Toho contract. So Rhodes got to dub his own voice, and Rhodes got residuals. Well, I got no residuals because my contract was with Toho. And I don't know, I mean, I honestly don't know really what Arthur's thinking was. But I've said many times, if Arthur were alive now, I would slap him. And say, what were you thinking? Because, you know, I felt, you know, doing the film, I felt so insecure and like I didn't know what I was doing. And then to have that voice just reinforced it. And I never told anybody I was in the movie. I never told us, well, I told my agent when I was acting for a short period of time. But I never told any of my friends. In fact, my friends I have now didn't even know I had done anything, let alone King Kong Escapes, until I started going to conventions. And the reason why I never told anybody is I was embarrassed. That voice was so awful. And, I mean, I think it's horrible.
Oh, you know, I meant to ask you before.
Mm-hmm.
Amamoto.
Oh, the motorcycle, yeah.
Yes. Now, and especially the reason I want to ask you about him is, I'm sure you must have heard about this from him. I met him when he was filming GMK back in 2003, which was a great, I mean, that was like a thrill to meet somebody of his stature. But the first thing he asked me, without anything, he's like, are you from Spain? That's the word. He was so into Spanish culture. And I know you were so interested in Spain, so I wonder if you ever
You know, I had forgotten about that, and I remember him talking about it now. I had completely forgotten. He was a wonderful person. He was a little odd, just like his character. Bad teeth, and he was very dramatic. And we didn't have a lot of scenes together, but he'd be doing something over here, you know, one day or whatever, and he'd come over. We'd just start talking. And he wore this cape in the film, and then when he'd leave, he'd say goodbye, and he'd twirl his cape around and make his accent. It just tickled me. He was, and then afterwards, he invited my mom and I to come see him do Fantasia on Tokyo Stage. And he wearing these tights, he had these gnarly little legs, and he just looked so funny, you know. But he was such a sweet man. I really liked him.
It was so memorable. I said, no, I'm not from Spain, I'm from Chicago. That's too bad. Okay, well, you see, he's totally about Spain and Spanish culture.
Yeah. And there was some Spanish speaking. I don't know what country they were from on the set. And I remember, yeah, I had completely forgotten about that.
Okay, so anyway, so after the film was finished, I mean, what did you do in, I assume you at least stayed in Japan for a while, but what did you continue to do in Japan?
We wrapped like in July, I think, of '67, and then I got a job. It just threw me to death. I got a job. There was a TV show called Seven Faces of Man. It was a detective show, and I was that week's guest star. And I played a princess that was, you know, touring whatever, doing her political job, and they were trying to assassinate me. And so the whole film, the whole TV show that week, I spoke Japanese, and I was so thrilled that they. You know, you should see my script, you know, it's all in Japanese kanji and everything, and I'm writing it out in, you know, phonetically, I'm writing everything out, you know, and it was such a thrill. So I did that, and then my agent said, because I left in February of '68, my agent said, they're talking about doing a TV series with you. And I was 19, and I was really a young 19, and I said, I can't stay in Japan without my parents, you know. So
Yeah, I was gonna ask, why did you wind up looking back to the States?
because I was 19 and young, and I'm an only child, so you're really attached to your folks. And that it took me a long time to detach. Yeah.
Well, while you were in Japan, I guess you met Mr. Natsuki,
Oh, yeah.
Yosuke Natsuki, who was the star of, people in the audience there might know him from, he's a star of Giger the Three-Headed Monster. He was Detective Shindo. He was also the lead in Space Monster Dogora. He was like an action star at that time. He played
He was so
like
handsome.
a dashing, tough guy.
He was.
How did you wind up meeting him?
Well, let me tell you, before I tell you that, let me tell you a little story. I'm in the commissary one day. You know the E.F. Hutton, the old commercials where everybody stops? Mifune walked into the commissary and everything went silent. He was so commanding. It's like he was 10 feet tall and handsome, and he was the man, you know, and everybody kept really quiet. And I remember that, and you know, it's like etched in my mind.
Was he in contemporary dress?
Yes, with a contemporary.
Okay. Not it would have been fun if he.
Oh, if he'd been like
a
in
Jimbo.
Shogun or something like that, samurai. No, he was in contemporary, and he was so handsome, and he was a movie star, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, how I met Natsuki. So one day, Suzuki-san, my makeup guy, said, "There's a fellow who wants to meet you." I said, "Okay, who is he?" And he said, told me his name, Natsuki Yosuke. And my hairdresser said, "No, you know me." I said, "Why?" You know. And so she tried to persuade me not to meet him because she's, "Oh no, he got lots of girlfriends." And you know, so I said to Suzuki-san, "Sure, I'll meet him," you know. And so I met him and fell in love. That was my first love. And that's how they found me now, was through him. Because a guy named Brett Hominick lives in Japan, and I'm just going all over the place. Anyway, I'm sitting at my desk in Richmond, and I get a phone call. He says, "My name is Brett, and I live in Japan." I said, "Oh, I used to live in Japan too." And he said, "Yeah, I know." And he said, "I've been looking for you." And of course, my first thought is, did I do something wrong? And he said, I said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Well, there's a big following, and I couldn't even, you know." So I am a little suspicious, and I said, "Well, how did you find me?" He said, "Well, it was really hard. I've been looking for 15 years, Linda Miller. I mean, everybody's named Linda Miller all over the world." And he said, "I couldn't find you, but a mutual friend of yours, Natsuki Yosuke." It was wonderful. And I hadn't seen Natsuki in 50 years. So, last time I saw him was in 1974, I think is the last time we got together. And so, I said, "Oh, okay, you're fine. I'm not suspicious anymore." So he said, "Natsuki told me your middle name was Joe." He said, "That's how I found you."
Oh, really? Yeah, you know, and you probably haven't heard this either. When I was researching Ishiro Honda's biography back in, I think it was like 2010 or 2009, we had this big actor summit. So we had Takarada and Kumi Mizuno,
Oh, wow.
Shirakawa, Kubo, and Natsuki, who was there? And Sahara, who else? Anyway, there were some of the actors, and so we had this roundtable discussion about Mr. Honda, and afterwards, they had gone up to each person to thank them, and so I couldn't pass up that opportunity. But anyway, Natsuki, when I talked to him, he said, "You know Linda Miller?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I know who she is, but I don't know her." At that time, he didn't know if I knew you. And I guess he wanted to get in touch with you.
Well, you know,
And I said, like Brett said at that time, it's like, well, everybody's been looking for her for a long time, but nobody knows. They
Yeah.
always thought you were Jackie Gleason's daughter.
I know.
Yeah, that's the common conception, the same name. But I think, Brett probably finding out the middle name.
Middle name. I can't
That's-
believe you remembered it.
That's the thing that probably, you know, led to finding you finally, but at that time he asked me, like, so he must have, you know, been thinking about you.
Well, he was literally, oh, I get really emotional. He was the guy.
So did you go back to Japan?
I went, oh, this is a funny story. In '68, I came here February '68. He and I kept talking. In those days, you had to actually use the telephone and take long distance. And so we talked and we wrote, and we were going to get married. And so in the summer of '68, I went back to marry him. And I was up for a part at Universal, and I said, I want to be with him. So I get there, and after 3 weeks, he tells me he can't marry me. And that just crushed me. And he never specifically told me why until I met him again in 2016. So anyway, so in 2008, so I leave Japan brokenhearted. But every year I go back, and every year we have a rendezvous and we meet and talk and all that. And then in '74, I think it was, he sent me a letter and asked me to meet him in Hawaii. And like an idiot, I decided that it just, meeting him and then leaving him just tore me apart. So I thought, I can't keep doing this. So I didn't meet him. And so he didn't know where I was, obviously, because I didn't live in LA anymore. And so I met him again in 2016, which was so cool. And so we, talked the whole time. And he told me them basic, he didn't come, Japanese, he didn't come right out and say it, but he danced around the issue that it would have, if we had married, me being a foreigner, at that time especially, would have affected his career. And he had worked really hard for his career. So before I left Japan, in '68 when we broke up, he wanted me to stay in Japan, and we went and looked at apartments, and I thought, no, I don't want to be a kept woman. And so I said, no, goodbye. So anyway, he was an awesome human being. He was a really, really nice man. And unfortunately for every other person I've dated since then, they've never been able to measure up. That's why I've been married and divorced twice.
Was this like last day of filming? Okay, yeah, this is the staff and cast picture.
Yeah.
And if you look in the dead center second row, that's Linda, and she's got the seat of honor right next to Mr. Honda, and flanked by Honda and Takarada. Rose right next to Honda, and Yamamoto next to Takarada.
Yeah, when we got ready to take the picture, I was sitting somewhere else, and Honda looked at me and said, Linda-chan. And so I came over and sat next to him, so that was, like you say, seat of honor.
It is. Honestly, for a staff picture, yes, you can't get a higher place to sit than that. So.
I was treated great. In my whole experience in Japan, which was so different than in the States, in Japan, sometimes I'd have modeling, I'd have a shoot, and I'd get done at midnight, downtown Tokyo. I'd be in the Ginza, and I would take the back alleys to the subway. Never thought about danger. Never had any bad experiences. Never got hit on by old men. None of that stuff that you read about Hollywood. So that everything I did, I don't have any bad memories. None at all.
Well, that was a really great conversation. I'd like to ask the audience, anybody have a question?
I wonder about shooting the scenes. Did they have something for you to look at when you were pretending to look at Cohen? Because of course he wasn't there
No.
when you were filming.
No, I mean, it was a huge sound station and a huge blue background. And so they just said, look over there. There was nothing to look at. Look over there.
Not even like a little ball?
No. Look over there, Linda.
At least they do that now.
Oh, they do?
put a ball up.
How kind of them. But no, nothing like that. everything you had to pretend. And that's where Rhodes' instruction about her mouth being a rose so he could kiss it, it helped a lot, you know, but no.
Do we know who the voice is for her in the
Mhm.
American Crime?
Julie, she's a very famous voiceover actress. Gosh, we can Google it, but she was a very famous voice actress, and that's why I believe they must have told her to talk that way, because I've heard Julie Nix, no, that's the same. I can't remember her name.
It sounds like she did both part and man of the crime, just in different sort of tonality.
Yeah.
Probably she's one of the voices from the animated films.
Oh, could be.
Because, I mean, all the other voices are from, like, Paul Frees.
She did everything everywhere.
Yeah, he did everything. Yeah, and she did almost all the voices for the puppet shows that he did, all those holiday shows.
Brett sent me a picture, he went to some event, and the actress who dubbed my voice in Japanese, he sent me a picture of her. You know, but I can't remember the girl's name who did my voice.
Yeah, it's much better to hear in the Japanese version.
Oh, yes, yes. Actually, I was in Monster Bash 2 weekends ago, and a fellow gave me, I don't have a copy of King Kong, the Japanese version, so I'm excited about watching that, you know.
You still remember Japanese?
Some, not as much as when I went back in 2016, we did it. Anyway, I was telling Natsuki to meet me on the 11th floor, and I got so flustered, they finally said, English, Linda, English. Because he spoke really good English. So our conversations were like a mix. And I remember when I introduced him to my parents, and he would say something in Japanese, and I'd turn around and tell him in English. Well, he said something to me in English, and I turned around and spoke Japanese. Yeah. So we had a good, it flowed. We were able to communicate. Yeah. So what was the question? I got sidetracked.
No, I was
Oh,
just
did I
commenting
supposed to
on-
be Japanese?
Yeah, right.
But I went back in 2016, and I did a really poor job. And Natsuki said, you better study your Japanese. He gave me for Christmas, because I asked, what do you want for Christmas? I said, I want a Japanese English dictionary. I had this big, huge dictionary with every word you could imagine in it. And I still have it. He said, you better study your Japanese.
We definitely want to thank you for coming over
Yeah.
here and
Yeah.
spending time with
Oh,
us
my
today. She has a table in the dealer's room where she has some stills available and some photos and stuff to get
Couple
signed. And I
pictures.
think we've got portrait time coming up soon, right? Where you're going to be doing
I
photographs?
think.
Okay. So she is going to be available for that. And we're going to do our giveaway. Again, a couple of people that came in after I handed out tickets. If you did not have a ticket,
Who doesn't have a ticket?
let me know so I can give you one. This is only for the drawing in this room. This is not for the main drawing up front. So if you don't win this, get ready to do it. Sorry.
Impressive.
The Kraken from the class.
Yes.
We're gonna draw right now. Reach in the bag and grab one.
All right. I'm sure the first 5 or 6 numbers don't really matter. 2042752.
I'm so excited.
Very good.
Bigger than she is.
Stick that in your pocket and walk around with that. Release the Kraken. Thank you all once again.
I've got ideas for this, for some local,
Great, very good.
Yes.
It's the one thing.
just my personal.